nature or subject of those documents. I'm asking how many confidential documents did you identify in this process of going through all of these documents that were submitted to you or that you reviewed on your own outside of what we may have submitted? What are we talking about here with confidential documents? 2,
I can tell
5,
you,
10?
I can simply tell you that I collected the universe of documents. I produced all the public records responsive to Mr. Borenstein's request. I have a file that has each specific privilege has a file related thereto. I didn't count the number of documents, but each privilege and each document, there is a legal justification for not producing it. And that legal justification should be discussed in closed session if we are going to be wanting to provide these documents to the Contra Costa Times or anybody else.
And it's not revealing the nature of those confidential documents. That this is an open session discussion around what does the district have. Dr. Lawrence, what do you have? Did you submit some documents that, you know, that to Mr. Rowland?
I said
Were
earlier
you contacted as well?
that I submitted, just like everybody else, any email that I had sent or received that dealt with the contracts and contract extensions.
So which individuals were contacted to submit documents, besides the 5 board members and Dr. Lawrence?
Anybody would have any documents, anybody would have any information relative to this request. Senior level administrators.
Okay, Mrs. Oaks.
You said in your opening remarks that if now it's up to the board to waive, and we've been directly given the request now to release the documents, so of course we're going to have to know what documents there are. Apparently, in Mr. Borenstein's letter, you wrote back that you believed he was in possession of some of the publicly released documents, so you would not be providing those again unless requested. I don't know anything about you're trying to get money back for locating Public Records Acts. That must have been given to the board before we came on. And of course I'd be interested in knowing if there is a process, but I don't even know what public records you have, the non-confidential records you have, besides the emails that I sent to you. That was all I had. So I don't know if we even know what, I don't know all of the non-confidential records that you have that could have been or should have been.
That's an appropriate thing to review in closed session. I would take issue with Ms. Hanson that if we are going to even be discussing whether the district is exposed to liability, that is a closed session item. We can have this discussion in closed session. We can review all the documents. If the documents are non-confidential or there is no legal basis for that, the board can make a decision whether to release them. It's that simple.
And you can't go into closed session just on anticipated litigation. Again, this has to be an actual threat of litigation.
Let me read the Brown Act to you, Ms. Hanson. Closed sessions are permitted to confer with or receive written advice from the agency's legal counsel regarding pending litigation against the agency when the discussion in open session could prejudice the agency's position in litigation. There's 4 sites for that. The pending litigation is deemed pending in 4 situations. I'll read just one to address my position. Based on existing facts or circumstances, the legislative body is meeting only to decide whether there is significant exposure to litigation that would authorize a closed session discussion under 54956.9 open paren B, closed paren, open paren 3. So if we are going to be having a discussion concerning closed session, concerning this document response, concerning waiver of privileges, that could conceivably expose the agency to litigation, and that is an appropriate subject matter for closed session. We can go into closed session to determine whether it's an appropriate subject matter for closed session.
It cannot be in an inference or perceived. It must be an actual threat of litigation.
Actually, would you like me to read the entire act on this?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay,
actually.
because there are circumstances that are pending litigation that the board is authorized to go into closed session that are not just.
Well, Mr. Rowland, you need actually to state that litigation. You can't just suggest. It's kind of like saying we have confidential documents. we have pending litigation, you actually have to have some specificity around that. You can't simply say there's some pending litigation or the potential of some pending litigation. It has to be an actual threat, or we have to have specificity. I myself have not been told of any litigation which is an actual threat of litigation in this matter. Therefore, it does not warrant a closed session.
It warrants a closed session.
It absolutely has to be an actual threat. So if you can name individuals who've actually threatened litigation, which is our right to know here, that is an open session discussion. And I will
Actually, it is
challenge
not.
you on that.
The Act defines the key phrase, existing facts and circumstances, in the terms of 5 situations that can justify an opinion that there's legal exposure. The 5 situations are facts and circumstances that might result in litigation against the agency, but which the agency believes are not yet known to potential plaintiffs. Which facts and circumstances need not be disclosed. Facts and circumstances including but not limited to accident, disaster, incident, transaction, or occurrence that might result in litigation against the agency that are known to a potential plaintiff or plaintiffs. The receipt of a claim pursuant to the Tort Claims Act or any other written communication from a potential plaintiff threatening litigation. A statement made by a person in an open and public meeting threatening litigation on a specified matter within the responsibility of the legislative body.
There's
So,
your actual threat.
That's one of 5 circumstances.
It has to happen in open session with an actual threat. I don't want to discuss the potential of litigation. Anybody could sue anybody at any time. That's one of the downsides to talking about anticipated or pending or potential litigation. What really this meeting is about and what we really need to get to, and I actually have a couple of things that we can accomplish here that are pertinent in an information item that really would help hopefully advance this to a level where we bring it to some resolution. So I'm actually going to be making a couple of motions and hopefully getting support on that. I have no idea, but I'm hopefully going to, that are pertinent in an information item session. It's not going to be making any decision on policy or anything around those lines, but we have several issues at stake here, and 2 that I see. One is immediately the issue around, are we going to demonstrate an openness and willingness to provide the public with information? It really comes down to really a fundamental viewpoint, which is if we actually want to act from a position of open access to information, or do we want to become an organization that really decides to be ultra-conservative and withhold that information, or be concerned about litigation that has not even been threatened? So what I'm suggesting is that tonight we actually come forward as a board with a philosophy. And in that philosophy, I'm asking that, and I'm actually making this as a motion which is relevant in an information item because it's not going to be a decision on policy. But I'm going to ask this board to really step forward on this. And I'm going to move that the board direct staff to review policy, which is right here, on public access to district records, and come back with a recommended policy of openness, including clear criteria for determining if records are the criteria for determining records are confidential, and acknowledging that the burden of proof rests with the district to prove records are confidential. So I'm asking that the board direct staff to review policy on public access to district records. This is not a policy decision. I'm asking that we as a board take a stand on coming forward with a concept of openness and a concept of reviewing our policy and a concept of deciding if this is really what is reflective of this board and what's in the best interest of the public. So I would hope I get a second. I don't know.
Second.
Thank you. And again, I just want to say what this is simply reviewing existing policy, which as a matter of course we should be doing. And I can understand, maybe Mr. Rowland, when you came on board, you might have had a different board. We've been through several boards. And the time that I've been on the board, we've changed as well. And now I think there's hopefully a new interest in how we can be more responsive to the public. And I think that's one of the fundamental issues here today is, do we want as a board to develop a more responsive, open attitude?